Hi, everyone, and thanks so much for being here. I'm so excited to have the chance to present at the TOCICO conference. I never imagined this would be a part of my 2021, so thanks for supporting me in this. My name is Alyssa Martin, and I work on the onboarding team at TaxValet. And just so you know who we are, TaxValet is a US based company that assists both e commerce and software companies with their US sales tax needs. I want to share with you today how reading the goal and adopting critical chain project management principles has positively impacted our onboarding workflow at TaxValet, both allowing for marked project performance improvement and less stress for our employees. I think this is also particularly interesting knowing that a lot of CCPM work is in the manufacturing sector. And so I'm wanting to provide an example in a service environment, a tax service company, and how we've been able to adopt these principles as well. So it all started with the goal, right? In 2020, it became apparent to us that the onboarding team was a major bottleneck to growing the business at TaxValet. We read The Goal by Goldratt and started to consider alternatives to our established processes. Something just wasn't working right, and we couldn't put our finger on it. As demonstrated by this slide, we have plenty of companies ready, willing, wanting to sign up and work with us. But overloading the onboarding team's capacity came at a really high cost. Here are some of the issues that we noticed. One was multitasking and just general inefficiencies and issues with time management in general on the part of our employees. We noticed higher incidence of mistakes, errors, basically reduced quality of work on the projects that were active. We definitely noticed high levels of stress among our employees, and this included often needing to work extra hours in order to complete their work. And then certainly we noticed late delivery. Our projects were late, later than 90 days. So I'd love to dive a little deeper into a few of these issues. First, it was really clear that we generally lacked the ability to have a productive conversation about project timeliness while we were in the middle of the onboarding process. So we were simply not able to identify a project as off track until the project crossed the 90-day mark. 90 days being the amount of time we expected to complete a project by, the amount of time that we told the client we would complete the project by. Another phenomenon that's related to that was that it was often the case that the final part of the project was either blamed or thought to be the cause of the delay, or sometimes even rushed because the project was determined as late so far along in the process. So we'd crossed that 90-day late mark, and whatever part of the project, whatever part of the process the project was in, was the most impacted. There just wasn't great accountability throughout the project. Another big issue, simply put, is that many of our projects were late. We provided a timeline, like I said, to our clients for completion in 90 days or less. And in 2020, almost 25% of all of our projects were completed in greater than 90 days. And many of those projects were significantly later than 90 days. You'll get to see some of our metrics later in the presentation, but just a teaser here. In January, we closed a project that was 169 days in length. In February, we closed another project that had been in onboarding for 242 days. Typically, if a project was late, it just kept getting later and later. So instead of prioritizing the late project and moving that towards completion, the onboarding manager might accept a new project. Maybe it was a more exciting project, something unknown, an unknown project. There was just no ability to properly prioritize projects and determine how to best manage our time. And then another issue that I want to go into is that onboarding managers were regular multitaskers. We regularly popped from working on a new client to helping out an existing client and then back again. This was a problem in part because new client work requires different time commitment than existing client work. Typically, new client work requires larger chunks of concentrated time to complete. And so it was often alluring to complete the shorter, sometimes easier or quicker tasks associated with existing clients and avoid the new client work, especially if it was going to take a long time, it was complicated, etc. This led to delayed timelines, later projects, and even greater multitasking related errors. So after reading the goal, we started to explore critical chain project management as a possible solution to help us identify what our issues were in onboarding and to allow us the ability to move clients through that process on a more efficient timeline. We really we really needed to be able to move clients through onboarding and continue to take new clients at a more efficient pace. But we definitely needed some more information to get started. So we utilized a number of different resources. And I just want to point a few of those out here. I would suggest that most influential on our path to success was working with Marris Consulting, specifically Philip and Jessica. Between the course that we took with Philip and Jessica's invaluable support, we had just enough know-how to dive in headfirst. Add to the mix the sheer impenetrable determination of TaxValet to shape new realities, and we were ready to go. Our goal was implementation of critical chain project management for new client onboarding by the end of quarter 1, 2021. Our first step was to identify our critical chain and set up timelines for those tasks and figure out what software to use and where to put that. But I'll get to that in another minute. What you see on this slide is our critical chain. When we look at it this way, it looks pretty simple and straightforward. This helps keep us focused and on track. This helps us identify when we're getting off track really early in the process. If, say, someone takes more than 4 days on getting started and someone takes more than 4 days or 6 days, excuse me, on confirming the data, et cetera, we're going to catch early on that this project is starting to consume buffer and heading in a direction that it could be moving off track. Sometimes people ask about how we determine the timelines. To be honest, some of our timelines, like how long we think these tasks on the critical chain take, most of those were nothing more than informed guesses, but we had to start somewhere. So that's where we landed. And we've been using this same critical chain with the associated timelines for a few months now. And we haven't felt the need to change any of them yet. They seem to be working pretty well for us. But this does lead me to say more about our software choices. And so before I get to the next slide, just want to point out that this Gantt chart is on something called Teamwork Projects. It was our strong preference to not adopt additional software for CCPM tracking. And so it was really important for us to make do with what we already had in use. We recognized that if we were going to adopt a new software for tracking, that there was going to be significant manual entry and maybe like employee discontent is a way to put that. So we already use a platform called Teamwork Projects for tracking our tasks related to onboarding, and we explored some of the other tools that they have, and learned that they have a tool for creating Gantt charts. So we now use Teamwork Projects to create a Gantt chart of the tasks on the critical chain, what you saw on the previous slide, right? It isn't perfect, but it actually works fairly well. And we're sticking with it for now. The other tool we use for CCPM, already in use at TaxValet as well, is Google Sheets. And so we use Google Sheets for a couple of different things. We use Google Sheets for tracking our metrics, for creating a weekly fever chart, and for monitoring project buffer consumption. We're also able, because those tools are all on Google Sheets, we're able to set up automations between them so that there's slightly less manual entry because of that. Now, don't get me wrong, there is definitely some manual entry, but I do believe there's less than if we had added a new software. And I would say that so far, this is working pretty well for us. So we've had critical chain project management in practice for a few months now, and we've already seen some really significant changes. And I'd love to share some of those here with you today. So the very first step that we took, I mean, we made this change after a few classes with Philip from Marris Consulting, because it was pointed out to us at the beginning as an obvious, it was very low hanging fruit, something to look at right away. So the very first step we took in this process was to add a new position at TaxValet. And this is to address the issues of multitasking associated with managing both new client and existing client work all at once. So now we have onboarding managers that only handle new clients, and we have onboarding managers that only handle existing clients. You might be wondering why this was so important. We found it integral to this experience for us. What we realized, and I mentioned this before, but was that the tasks associated with the different types of client are really different in a lot of ways. And onboarding a new client does require many hours of concentrated work time at one go. And like I said before, it's just really easy to put that off if that feels complex or challenging, or you don't have the time because it's being taken up by existing client work. We definitely found that onboarding managers would postpone the new client work, sometimes because they were just trapped in the existing client work. And honestly, it was just too much of a workload for one person to handle. So separating out these roles has greatly reduced multitasking and allowed the onboarding managers of new clients to commit greater chunks of time that's necessary to complete their work. Another change we made was reducing the number of new clients assigned to an onboarding manager at any given time, therefore minimizing overloading the employee with work, minimizing multitasking and general time inefficiencies. So you can see on this slide here on the right, um, this is just a piece of a spreadsheet, but these are different rows of clients assigned to different managers. And we strive to only have a maximum of 2 clients listed in the in progress category. So that red number 1 in progress category on there. When a client is in that category, that's the time that takes that's the part of the process that takes the bulk of the onboarding manager's time on a given project. And so if an onboarding manager has too many clients in progress, they're overloaded. It's too much to manage. So we're paying attention to how many clients are on their plate at one time, in particular during that phase of the project. We've also implemented a process where we will only let the sales team know that we have a spot for a new client within 2 weeks of the potential start date for that client. By doing that, we aren't guessing anymore about our availability, and we have a more real time understanding of our capacity for the new client. This has made a huge difference. All right, the fever chart. One of our biggest goals with implementing CCPM was creating this fever chart, having access to the information that we gain by reviewing this fever chart regularly. And so we do that now. We update our our project statistics weekly and review this chart at our meeting every single week, our team meeting. This has been a huge success for us. It's led to a greater ability to visualize and appropriately prioritize our projects and our time. We also, at this same meeting, take the time to individually review any projects basically any projects that aren't in the green zone, specifically highlighting any that are in the gray that are already deemed as likely to go late, uh, in the red zone and the yellow zone as well. And what we do as a group is we'll evaluate what's going on with that project with an eye towards brainstorming solutions to any outstanding issues and brainstorming ideas on how to get back on track. How can we improve the outcome? How can we prevent it from becoming late if it isn't already? This weekly review also allows team members to know the status of a project at all times. So it's created a really clear channel of communication among the team. And so, for example, if the project gets passed from one team member to a next at some point, that next team member knows exactly where this project stands. They know what was done prior to them, and they know how urgent or not it is to prioritize working on that project. Another integral piece to our puzzle is to look at our completed projects. And so once a month, we hold a monthly review of projects that have been completed. And this is to help us identify opportunities for improvement. So these reviews are based on the fact that we track buffer consumption for all clients on a continuous basis. So we look at the reasons why we either gained buffer on a project or consumed buffer on a project. And so you'll see on the slide, the top part is a list of reasons for buffer consumption, either gain or loss. And then we have a chart that pulls from that part at the top that kind of gives the visual image of where the project landed. So we'll look through this together as a team. It's been a great way to not only identify what went well or what didn't go well with that specific project, but especially to take that information and make changes or improvements that could impact future projects or all of our projects. We've already put in place small changes, small learnings that we've gained from these project reviews. And at this point, we've been able to do a couple of these, and they've been super helpful. We've also identified and adopted weekly and monthly KPI targets. We review these on a regular basis with an eye towards improvement measures again. And I'd love to show you some examples. But looking at these helps give us kind of an aggregate, like the big picture view of our portfolio overall. How are we doing? Helps us, it's another tool for helping us to identify if there are projects that are off track. And it's a conversation tool, a conversation starter. Are there areas that we see where we can make improvements? And so here's an example of some of our metrics. You can see from all the red for February and March of 2021 that we were way off track with a bunch of clients those 2 months. And so just to be clear, we implemented CCPM with all of our clients from starting in March and moving forward. And you can definitely see how significant the improvement is in our April statistics. By April, 100% of our clients were on time. The delivery was on time. And by April, except for one metric here, the one highlighted in red, that's longest time spent analysis, 38 days, except for that one, all of our projects were within the desired range. This this was a huge success for us. We were so excited. Now, I just want to be clear that the February and March data were particularly bad. Like that's maybe the worst, one of the worst samples I can offer. But that's what we had right before starting CCPM. And the change is noteworthy nonetheless. With a goal of moving all of our projects out of onboarding in 90 days, you'll see by our April statistics here that we had a mean of 49 days, which was significantly lower than that target of 90 days. We just saw such dramatic improvement in this. Now, we don't know if it will always be this great, but it was a boost and a great place for us to start. One thing we now notice is that a project that that has been in onboarding for around 60 days feels late only because we're checking in on the project every single week. We're hyper aware of what's going on with every project. We seem to perceive time and relate to timeliness of projects differently than we did before, which I think is a huge motivator in getting these projects moved out the door. And with those changes, and perhaps most important, it feels like CCPM has become a part of our everyday. I would say that CCPM is now a very regular topic of conversation among everyone on the team. The changes that we made were small, seemingly small, and quick. We were able to implement them on a very short timeline ultimately, but so effective that I would say even the most apprehensive of employees were quickly on board. They're able to see instantly that the benefit, the usefulness to using this practice. I would certainly say that CCPM is now an integral part of our culture and project management process in a way that is both a benefit to our clients and to our team. And with that, that's the close of my presentation. I'd love to address any questions that any of you may have and really appreciate you being here. Thanks so much.